I'm Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the videos you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues. And, Bible, theology, politics, and philosophy in relationship to those issues whenever the need strikes. Today is a Friday video. I don't respond to all the comments like I used to, but I do want to respond to a couple of comments. Now, one of them was away from the channel that I found very interesting. I'm a part of a minister group that's related to the Clergy Project, and we were discussing one of the members brought up this idea of what certain passages in the Bible mean. And so this kind of got me thinking along these lines. And then one of the comments this week was about how drugs may have played a part in some of the Jewish rituals. So let's talk about sex and drugs in relationship to the Jewish religion. But when you look at the Old Testament, the thing that my friend brought up in our Clergy Project group was this, that the euphemism in the Bible that talks about uncovering a person's feet is a reference to sex. And I really had to point out that there was more than one euphemism for this. It's one of them, but the other one is uncover the nakedness of, also like the one in Genesis where Adam knew his wife. These are all kind of euphemisms for, yeah, they boinked. So it's kind of interesting when you look at it from that perspective, because religion seems to have this very, how shall we say, prudish attitude most of the time towards sexuality. They want to keep boundaries. They want to keep social mores. They use God as an excuse to do that. Whether or not that's necessary anymore in a modern society that has, for the most part, come up with some cures for most sexually transmitted diseases, or at least ways of dealing with them. Plus, they've also come up with other ideas that involve, say, birth control and things like that. So some of these social mores, which may have been necessary before all those things, maybe just not necessary in modern society. But this adds a whole new spin. Like, I want to take a real quick look at the story of Ruth and Boaz. When Ruth goes into Boaz's room, now remember, Boaz is having a nice drunk time with his friends and some of his co-workers, and he's probably a little bit inebriated. The passage says that Ruth uncovered the feet of Boaz when he was in this state. Now, this adds a whole new spin of the story. I think a lot of Christians will say, oh, yeah, he uncovered her feet, and then she laid down at, his feet. And then when he woke up, he found this woman laying at his feet and didn't know what the hell had happened. That makes a whole lot of, doesn't really bother you that much until you realize that the euphemism for sex is uncover their feet. And this actually happens a couple other times in Scripture. So what you end up with is Ruth basically, while Boaz is a little bit drunk, slides in there, makes love to him, then, lays down at the foot of his bed. Okay. And when he wakes up, there she is. And he's not really sure what's happened. So it's very interesting that he's definitely inebriated to a point where he didn't know what was going on. And this kind of, flies in the face of most Christian culture that's very conservative or fundamentalist. I know I came out of a denomination that was very anti-sex outside of marriage, very anti-alcohol even, because they had been formed during that wonderful time of year of the temperance movement, back in history when that was big. And so our the Assemblies of God was kind of formed in that holiness aspects of it. So you'd end up with this kind of real anti-alcohol, anti-sex kind of mentality inside that's kind of still permeated in some of the doctrinal statements and the way things operate. And some of the official positions of the Assemblies of God definitely still have that flavor to them. But the story of Ruth and Boaz kind of highlights the fact that this was a very practical situation where Ruth needed a new husband. She needed somebody to redeem her and protect her because she was a woman in a very, male-dominated, chauvinistic society, pretty much. And so she ends up, having to go through this. Well, okay, I just slept with this girl. Now I better go and negotiate so that I can get her as my wife because, we've boinked. And so it becomes a little bit more manipulative of a story when you really think about it. And it's obviously written after the fact, after David's been king, supposedly, because they wanted to justify why this woman who was a foreigner was in David's lineage. So, whoever the Davidic people were, they were really trying to push this King David guy, and they wanted to make sure his lineage was pure, and that's why it's clue. Now, I had another comment along another line of looking at, the idea of hallucinogenic drugs being used in the Old Testament. There's actually a lot more to this than some of the others. Says, and this is from Joyce Sky, says, "Hi, Addis. I know you were said as a joke about people in the Bible using hallucinogenic drugs, but I'm not joking. There's a hallucinogenic plant that grows in Africa and parts of the Middle East, which was used in ancient times and is still being used by native tribes in those countries. Often wondered if some of the people who wrote the Bible were using hallucinogenics, as such as John of Patmos in the Book of Revelation. Tribes in our present day still have this plant, which they call a deep spiritual experiences. I don't know the spelling, but it's probably ayahuasca. Those people waiting in the Bible, either the schizophrenic or had some strong hallucinogens. And we both know that burning bushes and donkeys don't talk. People don't part seas, walk on water, rise from the dead, and ascend to heaven, etc. It's better. The one you are referencing is Ahusaka, which is actually found in the Amazon region, so they couldn't have used that. However, there is mimosa is a bark that's hallucinogenic from Africa, and there's several other native plants in the area that are hallucinogens. Hallucinogens are actually quite weirdly common. From an evolutionary standpoint, basically, it discourages people from eating the plant because you start to eat it and then you go completely crazy. You just, you lose sense of reality and you stop eating the plant. You just kind of lose it. But mimosa is a hallucinogenic from that time period. And I think, you make a valid point. I think, I did once make a joke and LSD wasn't invented that, I made a joke about that John of Patmos was on LSD. And I said, well, he could have been on mimosa. He could have been on several other things. And there's also another story I found interesting about drugs and old temple worship. There was a story in the New York Post, and I'll put the link in the description, where cannabis was found in ancient Israel temple called a revolutionary discovery. But basically, they have found the remains of burnt cannabis inside some of the temple areas where when they excavated archaeologically. If true, and they're not really sure yet, this would mean, they were smoking dope. Okay, they were, part of some of the ingredients for the incense in the temple is we don't really know what they were talking about. It may very well have been cannabis. And that kind of leads to some very interesting theories as to how this works. But the fact of the matter is, drugs were very much a part of ancient culture. It was one of the few entertainment forms that these people could readily have available because if it grew nearby, of course they'd go grab some and have some every night. And, until people started making marijuana outlawed, it grew wild and still does. So it's kind of like one of those things where everybody would have had access to some of this stuff just by going out to the forest or out into the meadow and picking these kind of herbs. And herbology was used for years, long before modern medicine and long before pharmacology. But drugs and the worship of Yahweh, they might go way back. Some of the other comments this week, I want to address one real quick. somebody asked me how I'm doing since since my stay in the hospital. I'm doing much better. I've had to change the way I eat more than anything else. Mostly no like big, huge meals all at once, kind of down a few items and then move along and kind of eat more like 5 or 6 small meals during the day. Um, but yeah, it's like I'm feeling better. And I have the doctors and nurses to thank for that, and I appreciated them. They even sent me a get well card, which for nurses, I thought that was quite touching. Thank you. I got to know a couple of them pretty well, because they were taking care of me, and I appreciated them. Um, yes, another from Aloha Aharana, I want to deal with the comment of the day. Here may be another thing to be aware of, and this is from my video on where the Bible writers were crazy. A Pentecostal shouldn't express his struggles to a Baptist because a Baptist will tell him, A, you're in the wrong denomination. That's your problem. Or a Lutheran shouldn't seek solace from a Seventh-day Adventist because he will be told, you are a Babylonian Sabbath, stop worshiping on Sunday and start observing the original biblical Sabbath, Friday, Sunday to Saturday sunset. That's your problem. All such gave me a spiritual migraine. There's a blind leading the blind, or in this case, the crazy leading the crazy. Yeah, I think that's my focus point of that video. Maybe the biblical writers were crazy, maybe they weren't. But what these biblical writings are, when you take them very seriously, is a very interesting way to find, some sort of way of dealing with this Bible thing and then trying to compare it to reality, and you lose all sense of reality. People ask me what I'm looking for. I'm looking for truth, small t, not big T, and I'm looking for happiness. And as an atheist, that's probably the best I can hope for in this life. It's going to come crashing to an end. And so, when I see these religions fighting, they're always saying you'd be happier or you'd be, whatever if you were in another denomination. And it's still the same crazy, scrambled egg brain stuff that I think now is complete nonsense. And that's why, you make an excellent point, Aloha, because you can't go to Christians of other sects because sooner or later they just kind of deal with whatever, and they'll just tell you, well, you're the wrong denomination, or you have the wrong viewpoint of the Bible, or you have the wrong viewpoint of whatever. So if you have struggles, with your faith, that's usually what happens. It's interesting to me how many people get disgruntled or lack their current denominational spin doesn't get to them, so they don't find any truth in it, and they'll switch denominations as if that's curing the problem. And I would submit to them, no, you haven't cured the problem. You've just punted to a different flavor of the problem, but it's still the same thing. You're right. It's these mental gymnastics that really get to you after a while, because to be honest, as a former theologian, I guess I suppose in some ways I am a theologian, only my basic premise is there is no God. So, to me, that's the default position until somebody proves me otherwise. I don't believe there is a God, and so I proceed with my theology as if there isn't one, which leads you to a theology of not much, and that's probably the way it should be. But once you accept the postulate that there is a God, well, which one? What's his nature? What's his character? What's his stuff? Well, I'm going to pull out the Bible. Well, the God of the Bible is kind of an asshole. Don't tell me about the New Testament either, because that God's an asshole too. Why would you kill your son when you can just forgive? I don't know. But you make a very good, valid point, Aloha, because you're not going to get any sympathy from your fellow Christians if they're a different denomination or sect of Christianity. They're just going to tell you that it's the wrong one. And so from a deconversion standpoint, you haven't really deconverted from being a Baptist if you just switch to being a Pentecostal. You're still a Christian, you're just a different flavor, and it doesn't change anything. I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe, and every little bit helps the channel. I also remind you that I do have a Facebook page called the Rabyd Atheist, so you're welcome to join me there. Mostly if you're used to using Facebook as a platform, and you just add me to your page list, so when new videos get dropped, you'll get it through that if that's more convenient to you. And so thank you for everybody who's liked and shared, and I continue to grow. And the next milestone marker to me is 250 subscribers, and we're more than halfway there. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And hopefully someday I can convince all of you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, also known as the Rabyd Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.